Hi everyone, welcome to the webinar. My name is Amin Mohammed and I am a Senior Planning Analytics Architect at Octane Software Solutions. In this session, I'm going to deep dive into one of the most powerful functions and one of my favorite functions available within IBM Planning Analytics V12. And no points for guessing, the function name is ExecuteHttpRequest. At its core, this function opens up world of possibilities by seamlessly integrating your planning analytics with any of the external systems. It allows you to basically execute the HTTP request directly from within your TI process. Now, what this means that your planning analytics, therefore, is no more an isolated system, but it plays a key role, or it's a key player within your interconnected ecosystem of products and the technologies that you have. What makes this particular function so powerful and versatile is the fact that it gives you the ability to connect to any of the external systems that supports the API. So you can literally say sky is the limit as long as it supports the API. And its ability to trigger the external APIs, I think, is one of the game changer, as it allows the developers to build the solutions within planning analytics that goes beyond the existing limitations or the traditional boundaries that are there within the planning analytics. In this particular session, I'm going to also give a demo of a few of the practical use cases that highlight the power of this particular function. And I hope that by the end of this particular session, it's going to inspire you to explore how you can use this particular function to enhance your TM1 applications and workflows. So with that, let's now deep dive into the capabilities of this function and see it in action. So I'm just going to share my screen now. All right. So here is where I am. So I'm, I've just opened up the workbench in Workspace, and here is the first TI that I'm looking at. So in this particular TI, what I'm planning to do is do the hot promotion of the objects from one instance to another. So traditionally, I think you would know how you would migrate the objects, which is just shut down the bring down the target server, migrate the objects and then bring it up. There was this ability to do the hot promotion in real time using the performance modeler before, but as we all know, it's no more available. So therefore, this particular function comes to a rescue. So how is this function gonna help us to do this? So let's see how that's done. So I've created this very basic TI, and I'm declaring some of the constants. So all I'm doing in here is I've written this TI in a instance called SmartCo. Within this particular instance, I'm taking all the dimensions of this particular cube called asset life and migrating this from SmartCo to my target instance. In this case, it is the demo server. And you can see here the demo server currently is all blank. So it doesn't have any dimensions or any cubes or any processes. So it's a completely blank instance. So what I'm doing here is a few other things, which is storing some of the the API details in my attribute dimension within as an attribute within the client's dimension. So the information is the environment and the API key. The API key is used to authenticate the HTTP execute request, and I've derived this from the workspace and storing it as a attribute. So what I'm doing here is doing a simple loop of the cube, getting the dimension. And the other thing that I'm doing is, again, this is not required, but checking if the dimension exists in the target instance or not. So here is where I'm using this as HTTP execute request. And as you can see here, there are a few parameters that you need to pass as a part of this particular function. The first parameter is the method that you want to call. Here, the method could be the get, post, delete, patch, etc. Then you define the API or the URL. So here you'll define the API as the next parameter for that one. And once you've done that, then you'll pass the authentication information if it is required. So because I'm using the planning analytics instance here, therefore I'm using the authentication API key as an authentication for that one. So that's what I'm also passing as a parameter. So there are other few parameters that you can pass, but for this particular task that I am doing, I am only passing this particular sets of information. So what this is going to do is it's going to execute this HTTP request with this particular API, where it's passing the dimension name as the parameter. And now what it is doing is it is capturing this particular response status code in a variable called s status code. So that's what I'm using. So it returns different response codes, and there's this response header, there is response body, and other information that it returns. So the response status code is what I'm storing it as as a variable, and that's what I'm checking. So if the dimension doesn't exist, then the response code would be 404, and that's what you can use all the different response codes that it generates when you execute any execute HTTP request function and use it for your logics and whatnot. So I've used that particular response status code, and then basis on the response code, if the code is 404, I'm executing the next steps. And what are the next steps? The next step is to save the file the dimension as a JSON file. Okay, so here is where again I'm calling the get method to get the dimension from the source instance. In my case, the source instance is the SmartCo, and for that particular dimension, I'm expanding down to the element level, and that information I'm outputting using this -o as a parameter into a folder within PAW called JSON DIMS. This is a folder that I have created and storing it as a JSON schema. So you can see here the dim.json. So that whatever the dimension is followed by the .json. So this is going to save the JSON schema or the JSON file within the PAW folder. Once that is saved, now I'm using that as a body within my subsequent HTTP execute HTTP request function to migrate the dimension in the JSON format from the development from the source to the target instance. So here now I'm using the post method to post it, and which is where I'm using this target instance to push it to. And here is where I'm passing this -d as a parameter this time, followed by @, and then you have the location where your JSON file is. So in my case, it is in JSON DIMS, and my content type in this case is going to be application/JSON. So that's another information that I need to post. I need to add within my execute HTTP request function. So with that, it's going to take this dimension from here and then migrate it to the target instance. So that's all I'm doing. And let's see if I just run this process, if it's going to do that. All right, the process completed successfully. So if I refresh it now, this, and if I go to dimensions, here is where you can see there are 3 dimensions. And if I go to the SmartCo and look at the asset life dimension cube, you'll have 3 dimensions over here: asset types, version, and asset life. So the three dimensions have also now been migrated in real time without any requirement for bringing down the instance. So, and if I expand this, you will also see that the elements are also added within this one. So you've got that, and sorry, so asset types. So if I just do the same for asset types over here, yeah, there you go. So you have got all the dimensions also been migrated. All right, so that's basically how the hot promotion works within the IBM Planning Analytics V12 using the execute HTTP request. Now for the cube, unfortunately, it doesn't work, but what you can do is you can always export the data from the source system and then load it into the target system again, .csv. You can export it and then import it back, in your target system. So that should be a very straightforward process. So that's my first use case, which is to migrate the objects from source to the target instance. Now moving on, the second one, or before that, let me also show you, if I go to JSON DIMS, you will now see the JSON files been outputted in this particular folder, which is what's been used to migrate the object. So here, if I just go to say asset life and then look at it, so you got the JSON schema over here that's been outputted using the execute HTTP request dash. So the dash O is what's actually doing that part. Similarly, I've got all these three dimensions. Right. So now let's move on to the next one, which is executing a process from one instance into another. In other words, the process exists, say, in system A and your instance A, and you're executing it from instance B. Okay. So the process doesn't have to exist in instance B. It can very well execute the process within instance A from the instance B. So in this case, I'm executing a process called sample TI in instance demo from SmartCo instance. Okay, so that's what we are doing. So traditionally, this was something that could have been done using the tm1 run TI function, where you can execute the processes from one instance into another. But we know that in V12, that particular function is no more available. So again, we'll have to therefore use the execute HTTP request to do the same within the V12. So here again, all the same parameters that I've passed. Then within this, what I'm also doing is, so if you see here, we don't have the TI process, the sample TI. So first thing first, what I'm doing is migrating the TI process. So like how we did the dimensions before, now I'm doing for the TI process. So again, I'm getting the TI process from the source instance, which is the SmartCo, and then saving it as .json in the folder called json tis, and then once it is saved, then I'm calling next execute HTTP request, which is to post that particular, or migrate that particular TI to my target instance. So here is where I'm moving it to the target instance. And in this case, again, the content type is JSON, and the body contains the JSON schema that's there in that file. Okay. So once that's done, the next step is to execute the process. So, but let's see before what does this particular TI have. So the name of the TI is sample TI, which is what this one is. And all it is doing is it is passing the parameter called pcomment, and then I'm just doing an item reject of that pcomment just to see that this particular process has been successfully executed. So if I go back to this one, so here is where I'm writing again the API body for my execution of the TI process. So that particular the body, I'm storing it as a variable called process parameters. And in my execute HTTP request, I'm calling the post function, and this time I'm calling this function. I'm executing this particular TI in the target instance, and passing the parameters from that particular JSON schema that you have. So once I execute this, it's gonna do two things, which is number one, migrate the TI process from the source instance to the target instance. Then number two, it is also going to execute the process while me being in the say source so the source instance, and running it in the target instance. Okay, so let's say before that, if I just go in here, if I just right click, see error logs, there are a few. Let me just delete all of that before we begin. Okay, that's done. So let's just run it. Okay, the process got completed successfully. I'm just going to refresh it, expand it. Now you can see the process has come up over here. And if I right click over here and then check for the error logs, you can also see the error log has been generated because of the item reject. And if I go and click at view, it also has passed the parameter value, which is test2. That is something that I have passed over here, as you can see. And also, if I go to the JSON TIs folder, you will see that the TI has also been outputted. And if I just go and preview that within File Manager, you can see the JSON schema for that particular TI. So that's essentially what we have in here. All right, so this is the second use case that I wanted to highlight, where you can now easily call the TI processes, using execute HTTP request. And then you also have other, supplementary functions to see whether the process has completed successfully. Not just that, but you can look at the response code and so forth and so on of that particular project, of that process, using the other functions that are available. Okay, so now moving on. The next use case that I want to showcase here is the ability to load the currency conversion rates from a website. Okay, so in this case, a website could be any website, it could be XC website or whatever, but in my case, I'm just using a website called exchangerate-api.com. I'm getting the API key from that particular website, and once I've got that, then I'm simply using the URL which has that API key and getting the USD conversion rates. So this is where I'm just only getting the USD conversion rate. Again, the API key is something which I'm storing as a attribute into one other dimension, and then simply executing that process or the function called ExecuteHttpRequest, passing the get method, passing the URL as well. And once I've done that, I'm capturing the response body in the variable called JSON response body, and also the status code into something called status. So now let's just quickly look at what the response body actually returns. So remember that whenever you execute any execute HTTP request function, it is always going to return a response body, which is where it shows what the body information it holds, and that's something that you can use for further applying the logic on top of that. So in my case, what I'm doing is I'm just doing an item reject to see what is the output of this particular uh, request that we have made. So if I just click at run, so this is what the response body is. As you can see, there are multiple keys, the result, the documentation, whatever information that you have. And the most important one that we're looking at is the base code, which is the USD, and the conversion rate. So this is where you can see all the USD to the other currencies conversion rates showing up all over here. So that's essentially what you have. So you have all these different rates that are available in that website, and it's all real time. It's all live rate. So that's what it is showing right now. So once you have done that, then what I'm actually doing is I'm getting the rate, because the JSON response body has got multiple information in there, but from there I'm just getting the conversion rates, which is one of the keys within the what do you say within that particular JSON response. All right. So what I'm doing is I'm doing that using a function called JSON get. This is one of the function which allows you to get the information from the JSON code or the JSON schema by passing the key over here. So in my case, my key is the currency conversion rates that we have just seen in our previous step, and that's what I'm getting. So, and I'm storing that as a variable called rates. And on top of that, I'm also getting the individual rates over here, which is in this case the INR. So in my JSON get the key parameter, I'm passing the INR as the key, so that I only get the INR value. So this is where you can now do a loop of your currency dimension, and then keep passing the currencies that you have and get the rate, and then do a cell put, and that way you can load the data within your FXQ. But in my case right now, I'm just doing an item reject just to show you what the output is going to look like. So two things what I'm doing is, number one, doing an ASCII output, and the other one is the item reject. So ASCII output is going to give me all the rates, but my item reject is only going to give me the individual currency rate, which is INR, USD to INR. Right. So let me just save this and then run it. There you go. So this is the USD to INR rate that we have, which is 85.82, which is what has come from the item reject over here. And if I go to the file manager, I would now be able to see the FX rate. So if I just go and click at the preview for this one, now you can see these are all the rates that has been pulled from that particular website, all in real time. So that's how you can easily again use the execute HTTP request function to pull the information from any website. In this case, I've just got the rates from this website, but any information that is available in the form of an API, you can get that information and use within your planning analytics application. So that's the third use case that I wanted to highlight, which was to be able to bring or to load the data from the websites online. Then the next one that I want to showcase is the ability for the planning analytics to send the Teams notifications. So either it can be a Teams message, individual chat message, or it can even be a channel notification sent to a channel that you may have created within your Teams. So this is where what I'm doing is I'm using something called Microsoft Power Automate, which is a cloud-based services provider for Microsoft that is used to automate the workflows to streamline the task and the processes that are available. So that is a cloud-based application that I'm currently using, which is basically integrating the planning analytics with the Power Automate to send the email notifications. So the way that it works is planning analytics is going to send a HTTP request, and in Power Automate, I've set up the workflow such a way that if any HTTP request is received, then it is going to trigger the action or a workflow. And in this case, the next step is to send a Teams notification. Now, the notification is dynamically controlled within the TI process itself, what information that I'm going to set. Just that the workflow is currently set within the Power Automate, and Power Automate is essentially what's sending the notifications within Teams. All right. So again, the concept is the same. You get the API from the Power Automate. You pass that API in here. There are so a few configurations that you need to do within the Power Automate, which once you do that, then it will allow you to send the Teams notifications. So what I'm doing here is, as a first step, getting the username. So one way to get the username is to store that as an attribute, but with the ExecuteHttpRequest, now you can actually get the username from the response body itself. So you don't now have to go and save the data offline or manually within the planning analytics. That information can now be dynamically retrieved from the JSON response body without you having to do anything manually. So that's where I'm calling this HTTP request, doing passing get method, and this is the API. This is the TM1 API or planning analytics API that I'm calling, a basic one. And what this is going to return is response, and then from that response, I'm using something called JSON to string, which is again similar to JSON get. In this case, it is getting that string information by passing the key. In my case, the key is the display name from that JSON response body, and that's going to give me my name. Okay, so that is the information that I'm getting. And then the next step is to execute a process. So here the process is again the sample TI, defining the payload over here, executing that particular process using execute HTTP request. And then once that process has been completed, then I'm getting the timestamp information from the header of the header response, basically, or when we execute this particular process. So this again one way to get the time is from the TI, but this is just to show that even from the response that you are getting by executing HTTP request, you can use that particular information and you know uh, show it wherever you want to. Either it can be email or report or wherever. So in my case, I'm generating this information, which is the timestamp, by getting it from the header into the Teams notification. So that's what it is. And then the status message is another information that I'm also passing to the Teams message. In this case, I've hard coded it, but this can again be something which can be dynamically be updated depending on the response of the TI process. And then once that's done, the next thing is the JSON payload. In this case, I'm passing this particular information within the Teams node Teams message, which is the process name. Number one, which is the CTI, which is nothing but the process that I've executed, the status of it, what the status message is, the timestamp when it was last executed, and the user who executed it. So this is what I'm passing as a body within the API that I'm gonna execute. And then the next step is to execute that particular process. So once I've done that, then I'm using the execute HTTP request to call that particular API, which is gonna then trigger what do you say the URL, which is something which I have copied from the Power Automate, and basis on this configuration. So this is something that you have to configure within the Power Automate. The fields should be dynamic so that it can take whatever the information that we are passing from this TI and then use that within the Power Automate. So that's the kind of an integration setup that you have to perform within the Power Automate. So all it is doing, it is sending that request, and then from that request it is you know basically passing these particular parameters within the message, and that's what you have. So, and I'm capturing the status code of it using item widget. So if I just run this now, yeah, so this is the status code, which is 200. That's an acceptable status code, which is what I was expecting. Now let's see if I go to Teams. This is where you can see now a message has come out within the Teams channel, and this is where it gives the information, the process name, the status of that process, the timestamp when it was executed, and this is in GMT because it is taking it from the JSON response body. So that's sorry, the header. So it's in GMT format, so that's why it is showing in GMT. But if you want to do any conversion, then you can do that. And then the user who executed this, so that again is the name that I have derived using that JSON string function, and that's what I'm showing up over here. So this way you can see here, once you have executed any process, you can actually send the teams the notifications to the teams. That way the users are intimated that the process has completed successfully, so that they can do the next steps from that point on. All right, so that's something which I think can be easily done now within Power within Planning Analytics. This time I've used the Power Automate, but then there are other different tools that can be used to do the same from there. All right. So then the next one that I want to showcase is the ability to send the email. So just like how you can send the team notifications, you can now also send the emails to your Outlook mailbox or wherever you want to send. The process of doing that is more or less the same. So I've again in this case used the Power Automate, but you can use even SendGrid or any other email service providers to send the emails. All you need to do is be able to get the URL and then use that URL within your execute HTTP request. So I've again got that URL from the Power Automate that I have set up. Again, I've created a JSON schema over there, made it dynamic so that it can take whatever the parameters that we are passing from this TI and then do that. So again, the concept is the same. So send HTTP request is the trigger, and then once that trigger is hit, then next step is to, in this case, send a email from the Power Automate. So it's going to send to the email ID that I have passed over here. The subject again is something which I've hard coded, but that can be again made dynamic, and the body. and then I'm just making that execute HTTP request, and then but once that's done, then an email is sent out. So if I just now run this particular process, again, I'm just capturing the response code using item reject. 202 is also an acceptable one. So now if I go in here, you will see that there you go. An email has popped up where it gives you the information like the subject, to whoever that I'm sending. In this case, I'm sending it to myself, and also the body of that particular email, which is something which is coming over here. And then you can obviously do a lot more things. So I'm only using these three fields, but you can obviously use multiple fields when sending an email. You can add an attachment and do all those kind of things using that. But yeah, that's pretty much that I wanted to cover, just to show you what are some of the capabilities that this particular function offers. And like I said, so there are multiple other things that can be done apart from what I have just shown. And it actually makes planning analytics more practical, and also it is more integrated with the other systems that you have within your organization. And that way it is not just restricted to the things that it can do out of the box. So you can do all those other things that you want using this particular function. So that's all that I have. With that, I will conclude. I hope that you found this session beneficial. Thank you for attending. Bye.